Oh, I think it's done. Okay, hi everyone. So welcome to my presentation. I'm sorry about the delay. We had some technical difficulties. This is weird. I don't know whether you look at the screen thing. Anyway, so I'm just going to get started. This is my presentation on communications in the field. And give me a second while I share screen. Oh, perfect. Okay, so communications in the field. The reason I've separated these initially anyway in the first place is because there is a very big difference between the communications you can do. And when I say field, I mean in field in the villages or in the remote areas, not in the headquarters of the country you're in. So there's a very big difference between the communications you can do and collect while you're in a main office and the communications you can collect while you're in a remote area. So this is tackling communications in more remote areas. So one of the most important things when trying to tackle communications in the field is effectively training field staff. Half of us, in fact, a significant majority of us, if you do work in comms, you get your information from the field. If you're not present in the field yourself, and you can't travel to collect the stories yourself, you extract that information from field staff who are working on the project. So your project officers that are in the field, your M&E staff, your reporting staff, these are the people that will give you the feedback that you need to develop different kinds of communications products. So you need to effectively train them. And one of the most important things when effectively training them is to not just, have a presentation and go for the presentation and leave. It's to provide contextually relevant templates. So you need to give them examples. So one of the biggest things you're tackling when you're trying to cover anything in the field to extract communications is if you're coming here training staff, or for example, you have staff from your headquarters or expats or foreigners coming to train staff on communications, they come and they will give you a presentation about how to take pictures and how you should write a press release and give you all these little examples of ones that have been written, but nothing is put contextually for the actual local field staff. And so you then try and relay this information to them. You're just sending them the same templates and the same information you've been given. You need to translate your templates into local languages and English. You need to provide both the context behind it so that they know what is relevant to extract for you. And I'll go through some examples in a minute. On top of that, you need to conduct live in the field training. And what I mean by this is instead of, again, just going and giving people a presentation, you need to actually go out there, take a team of people and physically help them gather what you're trying to get to extract. So if you're trying to extract a success story, instead of going there and telling them this is what we want, this is the success story we're going to have, you need to go there, you need to take them into the field. You need to get them to talk to someone in the techniques that you have just taught them. You need to get them to extract the exact information you want. In addition to this, taking them into the field is trial and error. Physical training outside always works better. You remember it more. People will understand everything more. If they're confused or they have questions about anything, physically being in the field and conducting the activity, you can guide them at that exact time as to what is right and wrong. And finally, the most important thing is feedback. It is very, very important that you give your staff feedback and relevant feedback. Useful feedback. Don't, a lot of the times people will get a story from the field and just take the story and completely rewrite it and, change everything in it and not get back to that person, and it's not helpful. If you can't guide that person and show them the errors they've made, then there's no point. In all of the jobs I've done, whether it's been grant management or communications or reporting or proposal development, working with things like track changes and keeping comments in there so they can see the changes you made, physically see how you've rewritten something is so important. You need to send that back. And on top of that, you need to send back when you had good progress. So if your story has been put on a blog or USAID has posted it or some other kind of donor has posted it, you need to relay that information back to the person who got you the story in the field. That person needs to know that they've done they've done a good job. Essentially, everyone wants to hear feedback on their work. But often, a lot of times, people who give you the story and who give you the information, or whether it's a press release, they're never actually contacted back. Not the credit, but the credit per se goes to your organization or goes to you as a communications officer in the main office. But it's rarely sent back to that person who's been, who essentially did the work to get you that information. So I'm just going to go over some documents that I previously created for a consultancy for the World Bank. I'm sorry I can't share the documents with you guys permanently because it was part of a consultancy. I had to hand it in. But you'll see my example of what I mean by making everything contextually relevant. So, am I still sharing screen? This is so confusing. Yes, I am. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. I'm going to share. Oh, hi guys. I need to share a different screen. Is it sharing? Okay, so I'm not going to go through the whole document with you, but this is just an example of, how do I zoom out? This is just an example of something that was created for this project that I worked on. So, as I said, the more information, I also create all these products in Arabic as well and had them translated. But the more information you give, the better. So these documents are documents that will stay on file with whether it's partner organizations, whether it's your field staff, they'll stay on file for a while. So the more information you can give, the better. A lot of times people don't necessarily understand what you're trying to extract when you say you want a success story. And so you need to be able to guide them through things like this. So in general, just saying things like how it should be written, the type of style, the theme, fundamental questions. These are going to be in every single success story you ever try and produce, for example. Things like avoid abbreviations. It's not going to help you if they use abbreviations as well when it comes to you writing about it. And then things like using direct quotes from beneficiaries. Again, so a guide in terms of how to write it as well, not just what you should or shouldn't do. So for example, saying things like set the scene, explain who the beneficiary is, where they live, work, their age. These are things that they already can use as keys when they're asking questions. The response, for example, what your organization did to respond to this issue, how you helped. And then the conclusion. So how you improved the situation, what skills were learned, what materials were given, how many people were assisted, beneficiaries. This is where you bring in the specific numbers. And guides on things like pictures, make sure the pictures are relevant to the story. Things like people often in the field, and that's something I'll go over later, but people often in the field think that just having someone's logo in the picture or having someone's jacket that says, UNHCR or whatever organization on it is a good picture. It's not a good picture. And I will explain why later. And then things like this, reminding them that they need to include their logo and the donors and the partners logo in the header footer. This obviously depends on your organization where you want to include it, but creating relevant documents like this. And then I will show you another document if I can. Oh, hi again. Okay, so hopefully it opens. Okay, so for example, a template. Creating simple things that once you've given a guideline, you've given what exactly needs to be in there, show them how you want it written, because often you get a chunk of text that makes no sense and these things are not things you can use. Bearing in mind, this will save your time as well and improve the quality of what you can produce and give. So for example, here I did the success story template for the field. The headline, title of your story, again, a short guideline about it. and examples, you know, show them what you mean. So for this headline, I put building resilience through natural resource management. This was a natural resource management project. The subheading, a summary of the story, no more than 8 words. And then I put what the organization did, has assisted vulnerable people in Kasala State with alternative livelihood solutions. Your pull-out quote, so include a quote, one that is included in the main body of the text that sums up your intervention and captures the success of the story. So for example, here, we're really struggling with the effects of desertification, but now as a result of the trainings, blah, 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 we now have food and we're doing better. The photograph caption. So this is also important. You need to include a description of the photograph, whether it's the person's name, what they're doing. So just taking a picture of a random person is never really going to work, because if that person's not the person in your story, and that has happened, I must say, as examples, people have found that, you know, they'll find that you faked a success story. They'll find that you used any random picture of a random person that wasn't the person, because people do monitor later on. People do go back to the field and they'll find the person that you wrote the story about who will not be the person you put as the picture, because you couldn't get a good enough picture. Caption. So Ahmad Hassan hard at work. This is just the caption for the picture. This is what he's doing. And then the main body, again, make it like a story, write it how you're trying to write it, but give them examples of exactly what to write. You know, this is still more example of the main body. And if you want to continue adding to the story, then insert success before and after works, pictures, so refer to the guidelines. So make sure all your documents align with each other, that they're not just there. Okay, and now, this is so much screen sharing. Stop sharing my screen. Oh, hi again. Go back to sharing this screen. Sorry, I'm just waiting for it to share. It hasn't opened up yet. It's going to. Okay. Okay, we are back. Okay, so the benefits of communications. I'm not going to go over this too much because I'm pretty sure that everyone is kind of aware, but the main things you can use it for are funding/fundraising. So many of these stories, you develop brochures, annual reports, pictures created, are used for fundraising. Donors love to have success stories. In fact, one of the biggest things that they ask for as part of their donor compliance is to be fed back communications materials. And that's because every donor is the same. You know, they want people to see that they're helping. They want people to know what they're doing. That's the aim. It's also good for awareness raising. So the images are effectively used to show people what is happening. Not everyone will read a report. And so developing things with good visuals on them allow people to physically see what's happening. Visualization is very important. It's also something you can use when showing results for things. Instead of having a list of results and the amount of beneficiaries, you use visualization. Use a graph or a graphic. Create something. There's so many websites online now that are available to you to create all these things that there's no reason why our reports should be all thousands and thousands of words and nothing else. Donors, as I said, donors love communication, and often big donors, it's a requirement, a part of the grant. For me personally, working with USAID and EU and ECHO, I can tell you that I have had to create, as part of the grant, communications products that in the end, USAID, for example, ended up using on their blog and their websites and things like this, but it was a requirement of the grant. So I had to go to the field to extract these things. And it's good for your personal profile. Often comms people are not necessarily hired in the field. Communications in the field is not a big deal. A lot of the times people just ask for reports and they send it to HQ communication staff and they will create a success story out of it or press release. But it's not the same as what you can create when you're in the field. And so creating things and increasing your personal profile adds to the sector, adds to the importance of having communication staff in the field. And also, for people who are not communications background or anything else, creating these kind of documents isn't difficult. Once you have the kind of guidelines, we've all read stories, we've all read articles, we're all capable, whether you're in Amani, whether you're in, I don't know, disaster preparedness, or you're in agriculture, whatever your specialty is, you being able to create something like this shows that you have all-round skills. A lot of the times these tasks are left to project officers as part of that project because, as I said, they don't hire communication staff. So it's important that you are able to familiarize yourself with these and what is wanted and the times and what's happening. And you get published sometimes. I've been published on various different donors' websites, and they're useful when you're applying for jobs. That part where it says, show us what you've done, if you can just put in a link to the USAID website, or you can put in a link to the EU website, it looks good. The fact that you don't have to necessarily upload a document, that you're published on this donor organization's site, and you could just link that off, like, yeah, this is the work I've been doing. Okay, so this is something I want to go over. I just need to be conscious of time, sorry. So, your angle. And this is something that's very important because this is something that needs to be relayed to field staff effectively. So before you ask someone in the field, or before you yourself would like to gather any kind of comms materials from the field, for whether you're developing, like I said, a poster, an annual report, a press release, something for your website, whatever it is, you need to decide what you're using the shot for before you take it. And I say this, for example, website banners, you need to memorize your website size. You need to know the dimensions of your picture. So when you're taking these pictures, you can have a picture that is useful for your site. If you're using a close-up picture, an impact picture, if you're using a promo, you have to leave extra space on the side for text. Whether it's a newsletter, social media, for example, there's no need for spacing because you can't add it to the document. You will add it to whatever's underneath. So the text is affiliated with it. So I'm just going to go over some examples below of some things that I've recently done. And so, for example, this picture below, this one right here on this page that I've put is cropped to the size of the website that I currently work on for American Red Cross. But this is the original picture. And so, as you can see, I mean, I didn't take this picture. Had I taken this picture, I personally would have been from a much further angle so that my dimensions would have captured the whole bodies of the kids. However, it didn't. But this is still usable for me. I have faces. I can clearly see different people's faces. There's happiness. There's a lot of things that I can still use on the site, which is why I dug through the Red Cross backdata and selected this picture for the website. For example, you have this one. This one's also on our website. As a picture, this is obviously explaining that this woman is, you know, doing some farming. It's agricultural picture. And so, again, if you know your dimensions, you can still capture that in the picture. Yes, I've lost the majority of the background. However, as I said, you can still see her full body, you can still see her face, and most importantly, you can still see the action she's doing. You can tell from this picture that she is still farming. An example of another picture that, for example, would not have worked well is this picture. Again, these are all Red Cross images. Again, this woman's farming, and it's something great we can use. But if I take the dimensions of my website banner, I can't capture anything. If I try and capture the bottom of the picture, I don't have her face. Without a face in focus, it's not useful. If I capture the top of the picture, I have her face with clothes hanging behind her. So you've completely lost the context of the fact that she has a home garden, that she's growing her own food, that it's sustainability, that she's actually probably producing income for the household. All of that has been lost because you no longer have the full picture as it is. When you look at it like this, great. You see someone who's doing agriculture. You don't know who they are. You can't relate to them. You don't know if they're happy, if they're sad. You have no idea. When you see this, you just think she's happy because she's hanging her clothes or she's washed her clothes. Again, you do not have the context of what she's actually doing. So it's very important to focus on these different kind of things when you're looking at creating these documents. And it's very important to relay this to people as well. You need to be able to communicate to people. And this is what I mean by physically doing training in the field. And I understand it's difficult. A lot of organizations don't necessarily have the appropriate cameras. People have phones. But honestly, even the iPhone now can capture amazing shots. You need to be in the field with people who will be sending you this information, people who have daily interaction with beneficiaries. If you do not, you need to reach people who have daily interaction in your project. That is the most important thing. And you need to take shots with them. You need to show them. They need to see the process from beginning to end to understand. So you need to go and take a picture like this with them, and then go back and try and put it into the website dimensions and show them how it doesn't work. So that next time when they come and take this precise picture, they can move back a significant amount more, so you can actually capture this person in your dimensions. And as I said, of course, your dimensions change for everything depending on what you're doing. So that's another thing you need to focus on. As I said, things like social media, you don't need to have extra spacing on the side or anything like that for you to put text into. It's, you tweet it, you're going to add the tweets underneath. You're going to add the text underneath. You Facebook it, you're going to add text underneath. So you're more able to use close-up and dynamic shots than you are with anything else. And then I just want to talk about the impact of a powerful picture. And this is something that people don't necessarily focus on as much. As I said, having things like the logo, your organization logo in the background, but someone's back to you or someone not facing you, it's not useful. And I want to make this very, very clear. This picture, for example, in front of me here, has no affiliation to the Red Cross right now. I do not need this woman to be holding up a Red Cross, have a Red Cross jacket on, or have a Red Cross banner behind her, or have, something here in the background showing this, Red Cross has helped with this initiative. You do not need any of that. You can simply input the donor logos once you've created the document. You do not need to force a logo to be visible in a picture. If you get a logo visible in a way that's great, that's perfect. If the person's looking at you, they have full eye contact, that's great. But most of the times with all these organizations, we have our logos on the back of our jackets. You have a huge IOM logo, you have a huge UNHCR logo, you have all these different kind of things. Those pictures are not useful. Seeing the back of my head, for example, in an intervention where you can't see the beneficiary, you can't see what I'm doing, but you can just see a nice big IOM logo, a nice big American Red Cross jacket, it's not helpful. I can't use it, the field won't use it, the head office won't use it. So I just wanted to talk about quickly the impact of a powerful picture. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know this picture, but if you don't, this picture caused a significant amount of controversy and won a lot of awards, and eventually, sadly, the person who took the picture committed suicide. But pictures like this person finding this picture, everything is explained in the shot. There's no need for words. And when you get a picture that is powerful enough, and we all work in circumstances where we really can. We've all seen things like physically with our own eyes where it's impacted us. And if you find a way to capture that in a picture, you don't even need words. There's a point in time where if your picture is powerful enough, you can produce endless amount of communications products with it. And I just want to give another example is, of course, you all know about the migration crisis, but if you've ever noticed or followed it from the very beginning, the migration crisis at the very beginning was never seen to a full scale until people started taking aerial shots. And when people started taking aerial shots, and you could obviously see everything that's happening and see the amount of people in the water and the boats, is when people started to become really, really shocked. When you could see one boat with like 400 people on it, that's when things, really changed. And for example, images like this is what I want to talk about with spacing. This is a shot. If they would have taken the shot extremely close to the boat, one, you would have lost the context of essentially the idea of it being a vast amount of sea, but two, they would not have been able to fit this text in. So this shot has strategically been zoomed out so that there's spacing for whatever promo or whatever information it is that you're trying to communicate. And so this is what I mean by taking the appropriate shots. So I do have, that's into the PowerPoint presentation. I have, if I can figure this out again. Oh, hi guys. Just 1 second. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay, And now share screen again. Hopefully, sorry guys, this is special. Okay, so this is something I did for IOM in Sudan. I just want to give you an example of what I mean by spacing. So also this is a close-up shot. Again, one of the powerful kind of shots. But this is an example of a story that essentially I actually got this story from someone who was in the field, and I was on the phone for almost 6 hours to get this story. And in those 6 hours, I mean, I was speaking to the member of staff, trying to direct him to go around and who to speak to. And eventually I spoke to this man, Ahmed, directly himself. And so I got this story from him. But I just want to show you some of the points that I was talking about. So again, like having your title very short is very important. Information, context, and background. It tells you where he's from, what town, how old he is. Description, you know, having like this picture, you can see from this man's face that he's tired. And having a shot like this is something extremely useful. You know, there's not much you can describe a little bit, but you don't need to describe in a significant amount of information, because the picture kind of speaks for itself, and you're explaining the context of what you did. And the story, despite his living situation, all these kind of things. This is actually something that I can send to you all afterwards. It's published online, so it's something I can give you in terms of being able to see what I was talking about and the guidelines and how to set a story and how to use it and things like this. So when I created this quote, I blew up and made him bold. So when you look at this story, the first thing you see is his face. The second thing you look at is this quote, which says, "Hunger they were used to." And that in itself is impactful enough to make you want to go on and read the story. And then obviously the rest of the information carries on and tells you about IOM's intervention and what we did and what the program is and how it's helped him at the end. You know, that his family is now safe, he now has clean drinking water, he has food, he has non-food items, shelter, all this information. So everything does need to follow in a sense, in a way. And as I said, like, these are things you can get published on and things that are like end up being very useful for you to use. But as I said, I also want you to notice that there's no IOM logo on him anywhere. Like this shot was never strategically placed. There's no IOM banner in the background. There's no member staff. I've just put the organization's logo. And that's enough, you know. And if you are the person who's creating these documents or creating these website posts or working within this kind of information, you know, you'll know that using Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop and all these kind of things, you just need to input the logo. It is not that essential for you to put everything in. And I will show you an example of, I'm hoping it's still here. I'll show you an example. Okay, so here it is. This is an example of an extremely bad picture, and I hope it doesn't move while I'm trying to show you guys. This, obviously, I didn't take since I left. I know they miss me, but anyway, this picture does not tell you anything. Okay, they're distributing emergency shelter in West Darfur. You can't see any distribution here. You can't see any beneficiaries. All you can see is houses that were damaged by the floods. Okay, that's great. I can see the damaged houses. But really, the main focus of this picture is this man with his back to me and his big IOM logo. I'm not focusing on the damage. It's not the first thing I'm looking at. And I don't understand from that that they're doing an emergency shelter intervention, that they're helping that in that way. So this is not a useful picture. I mean, I just want to point out that having staff in pictures can be very useful. However, having beneficiaries or staff interacting with beneficiaries or receiving things is a million times more useful than having something like this. This is not a useful shot, which is probably why it's not on the IOM HQ website. I probably also don't do things like this. Don't blend shots into each other. These are 3 different images that have been blended into one image. It doesn't work. The context doesn't work. Just don't do it. I'm hoping to find that picture. No, okay. So, well, anyway. So my example is, don't do things like this. It is never, ever good for you. Okay, I think, if you give me a second. Okay, so I think I'm done with time, but just one of the most important things I want to relay is how essential it is for you to show people exactly what you want. You know, and you can never, people get frustrated working with people in the field and reports, and they don't send me the report the way I want it. And like I said, sending things back and track changes is more useful for the person than it is for you. Instead of criticizing and instead of telling people, oh no, this wasn't done correctly, you honestly, I don't feel that it is appropriate for people to tell someone they've done something wrong if you haven't told them how you want it done in the first place. If you haven't initiated an example of this is the quality I expect, this is how I expect you to do it, this is how you can do it, let me help you if you need more help, then it's not fair to turn around and be like, oh, I didn't get anything. And so oftentimes people complain about the information they get from the field and the reports and the pictures, but they do nothing to train these people. And so like I said, one of the most important things is providing guidelines and providing them in context of the environment you're in. So take a project that people are actively doing and use their project to develop a quick story from it. I mean, it's a fake, you can make it up and it's an example, but it's something that they understand that they can later then create. And, you know, I would say another big thing is to encourage your organizations, if they're not organizations that focus on communications very much, and like, for example, don't have any camera equipment, I would say encourage your organizations to work in it. As I said, most big donors, especially USAID, EU, a lot of these other organizations, most of them require comms products as part of their donor compliance, and most of them have a budget towards communications. A lot of the projects we work on will have a communications budget. A certain amount of that grant has to go towards communications. So I would say leverage your organizations, leverage them to make sure that that communications budget is used to get the equipment. Essentially, writing the story is not expensive. It doesn't cost you anything. It costs you the member of staff that you're paying for. But having that one camera, like for example, when I started in IOM, there were no cameras. I bought one camera, sort of shared it out with the field, and once I produced enough products with that camera and they saw the usefulness of it, and organizations like USAID were posting us on their website, and we had CNN interviews and BBC and all these kind of things came out of creating these stories, they then bought 3 cameras for each field office. So it ended up being a total of 12 cameras. And so what I'm saying is, if you show the usefulness of communicating in that kind of way, it will be a benefit. Organizations don't realize how much comms in the field is important, and that's why I say don't be that person that's doing communications in the field that just takes the stories that, you know, are necessarily badly written or aren't in the style they want and just edits them how they want and sticks a random picture on it and sends it off. Don't be that person. Be the person who goes out and procures better stories. Be the person who trains other people on how to get these stories. And I will be more than happy to answer any questions. Again, I'm really sorry that I couldn't do this live. It would have been more useful because a lot of my presentation I had to change because it was actually interactive. But yeah, so if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to help. I can't share the guidelines, as I said, because they were for a consultancy for the World Bank, but I can definitely share like my notes on creating them and, you know, personal things that I did in order to develop those documents. I can share a significant amount of success stories that I've done in the past, different things that USAID have published and all these other different organizations. That's definitely something I can share. And yeah, so if you have any questions, please email Sarah or me, maybe Sarah, and then she'll relay to me. I'm not too sure, but we'll figure that out. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation and learned something from it.